Hi, my name is Aaron Rift, and this is my video about the best and worst moments of AMC's The Walking Dead, heading into the 7th season. Let me preface this by saying that I never read the comic books leading up to watching The Walking Dead. I became a fan of The Walking Dead, and I was interested in checking out the show because of my love for horror movies as well as zombie movies. I was a huge fan of George Romero's Night of the Living Dead trilogy, along with Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. And in particular, I would say Dawn of the Dead is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. I'm talking about the original one, of course. So when AMC announced the Walking Dead TV series, I was very excited about the possibilities of taking this concept of these zombies taking over the world, this zombie apocalypse, but spreading out the story and seeing where it could go. I thought the pilot episode, Days Gone By, was fantastic. In my opinion, it's still the best episode of the entire series. Right from the beginning, the style of the show resembled the universe of George Romero's trilogy. I instantly liked the main character, Rick Grimes. It was established right away that he was a very competent police officer who was also tough as nails, but also deeply cared about his family. So you instantly felt sympathetic towards him and you were behind him right from the beginning. What fascinated me about the series is how it showed the different reactions from people and how they handled a catastrophic situation. You had some characters like Dale taking on a more conservative route and wanting to be passionate and trying to preserve human life as much as possible, while other characters like Shane felt that you had to do whatever it took in order to survive, even if the actions were seen as harsh or even barbaric. Another thing I found interesting were the relationships between the characters. You had Rick's wife Lori being pregnant, you had the love triangle between Rick, Lori, and Shane. You had the relationship between Andrea and her sister, and later on, Andrea would be involved romantically with the governor. Then you had the romance between Glenn and Maggie. Also, you had the relationship between brothers Daryl and Merle. Overall, I felt the first season of Walking Dead was the strongest. I liked the group's trip to the CDC to try and figure out what the hell was going on with this zombie outbreak. I give Frank Darabont a lot of credit for the quality of the first season, as he not only directed the pilot, but he was also responsible for co-writing several of the episodes. Darabont is perhaps best known for directing Shawshank Redemption, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, by the way. He reportedly had a falling out with AMC, which led to his departure from the show, and I definitely noticed a dip in quality of the show once he left. I felt the first half of the second season was slow. The main storyline was Carl being shot by accident and the search for Carol's daughter, Sophia. I felt like the show was just losing a bit of momentum at this point. It had moved at such a fast pace during the first season, and then things really slowed down at the start of the second season. I did feel that things picked up with the second half of the season once the Rick versus Shane storyline really kicked into high gear. I found Dale's death to be quite dramatic and very disturbing, actually. I was also sad about Shane's death, even though you were starting not to like his character at this point, because I felt his character was very interesting and he did seem to be ahead of the curve when it came to knowing what had to be done in this zombie universe. He knew you had to take extreme measures in order to survive. I thought the third season was the best season of The Walking Dead next to the first one. The governor comes along and is truly the first actual villain that you have in this series. You have the introduction of Michonne, who I feel is one of the most likable characters in this series. I thought one of the best episodes in the entire series was when Lori died in childbirth and you had Rick's reaction, which was just absolutely heartbreaking. I liked the storyline with the studies being done at the governor's camp and they're trying to figure out more about the walkers. I like that storyline. And I also like the interaction between Daryl and Merle being on opposite sides. Also, the whole Andrea storyline with the governor. I just felt there were a lot of interesting storylines in this season. I did feel, however, that the season finale was a bit anticlimactic. I felt the fourth season is when the show really started to decline, particularly the second half. The pacing was a lot slower than previous seasons, with some of the episodes only featuring a handful of characters since all the characters got separated. The amount of characters on The Walking Dead is actually one of my biggest issues. I feel that starting around the fourth season, there were just too many characters, and it got to the point where it was difficult for me to care about all these characters with there being so many of them. I think the mid-season finale, though, with the governor's invasion, was one of the best episodes of the entire series. However, I felt the episodes in the second half were very slowly paced, like I said, and it came off to me like more filler than anything else, just trying to drag out the series. You know, the ratings were sky high at this point, and AMC's trying to milk this series for all it's worth. That's what it felt like to me. Like they're just trying to milk this thing as much as they can. And I understand it. I understand that it's a business and AMC's trying to make money, but I felt like the show was really starting to suffer with these episodes being dragged out and the storyline being dragged out. I understand it's important to have character development, but I felt like some of these episodes were unnecessary. Did Daryl and Beth really need to have an entire episode dedicated to just the two of them? I felt like 15 minutes could have gotten the point across and established the bond between them instead of doing an entire 45-minute episode dedicated to just the two of them. Just my opinion. The fifth season started with an absolute bang. The Terminus episode is another excellent action-packed episode, but interestingly enough, while I felt that some of the other episodes were too slowly paced, I was actually surprised at how quickly the Terminus storyline played out. It was pretty much all over in 2 episodes. The rest of the season went back to the previous formula where even more characters were introduced and you had the groups being separated again. I wasn't a big fan of the hospital storyline, and I knew something was going wrong with the show when I hardly felt any sadness about Beth's death. I did feel that the second half of the season was better as we saw the group head towards Alexandria. I did like the introduction of the Eugene character because part of my intrigue in this series was seeing if the characters could find a cure for the zombie outbreak. I was actually disappointed once it was revealed that Eugene was just faking his knowledge about a cure. One thing I did like about this season was the development of Carol's character and seeing how far she had come since the beginning of the series, and she was becoming one of the true leaders of the group. That is one storyline I felt was really strong during this season. And now we get to the 6th season of The Walking Dead, which is where I felt the show really jumped the shark for me personally. I talked about earlier how some of the episodes were slowly paced on purpose to drag the series out and generate as many viewers and TV ratings as possible, but I felt whatever artistic integrity this show had was thrown right out the window when you had this so-called death of Glenn. I saw it as a very cheap ratings ploy to trick the viewers into thinking he had been killed when it was just a camera trick. Glenn's death was already teased once at the start of the 5th season, but this was even more ridiculous and over the top and just too far-fetched to believe. I will say I did enjoy the one episode that was dedicated to Morgan. At least that made sense because we really knew very little about the Morgan character, and this was developing his character. So of all the episodes that were focused on one or two characters, I felt that that was one of the stronger episodes. The next thing that bothered me about the 6th season was the storyline where Rick's group made a deal with the Hilltop crew to kill Negan's followers in exchange for food. Up until this point, Rick's group had only killed other living people in self-defense. I found it far-fetched that Rick's group would be this desperate for food that they would need to kill people they did not know. Some people defend this by saying that the Hilltop group told Rick's people that Negan's group are bad, and Rick's group just accepted it. They believed them. And I find that hard to believe that Rick's group would just take their words for it and kill these people they never met before without even investigating it or finding out more information. Then you had the season finale, which I felt was yet another cheap ratings ploy, maybe the cheapest one, more so than teasing Glenn's death. The entire episode was building up to this confrontation between Negan and Rick's group. And after all the buildup, we did not get to see the payoff. We have to wait 8 months to see the cliffhanger. Now, I felt it would have been a good cliffhanger if the episode actually was eventful and you had some other things happening that were significant, so you at least felt satisfied with watching the episode. Instead, it was just building up to something, and then you had to wait. You have to wait 8 months to see the outcome. That was the biggest problem with that episode, that it was just a lot of buildup and a lot of hype, and then you got no payoff. In closing, I will continue to watch The Walking Dead, at least for the time being, since I've been so invested in it over the years. I genuinely hope that the quality of the show will improve, but I'm not getting my hopes up about it. I cannot say I'm particularly excited about seeing a guy with a CGI pet tiger. And that's the other thing too. I haven't been a huge fan of the special effects in some of the recent seasons. It looks too obvious to me that it's CGI, and I think part of the magic of special effects is when you cannot tell it's a special effect. That's just my opinion on it. I noticed that it comes off as computer generated. I really don't care about what happens to anyone from Rick's group now. I no longer feel any sympathy for them because they've proven that they're no better than anyone else. I want to see something new with this series. I'm tired of seeing the same storylines where the groups get separated and then they have to find each other and rescue each other, and then you have these different groups feuding with each other. I want to see a group of people I like and admire, and I want to see them trying to come up with a solution to the problems in the world and trying to rebuild the world, and also trying to find a cure for this outbreak. I want to see more of the research and more discovery. What is the end result of this series? It doesn't feel to me like the overall story is building towards a climax. It just seems like the same storylines are going to repeat themselves until the ratings drop enough that AMC decides to move on. As a fan, I expect better, and I'm holding out hope that the series will rebound before it's too late. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with a friend on social media. You can add me on Facebook at Aaron Rift. You can follow me on Twitter at Aaron Rift, and you can check out my photos on Instagram at Aaron Rift. Thanks again for watching.